Rob Tebbutt here for 101 Boxing, and welcome to my preview of Joe Cordina's IBF Super Featherweight title defense against Edward Vazquez this weekend in Monte Carlo. Okay, so this weekend we see the return of the Welsh wizard Joe Cordina as he defends his IBF Super Featherweight title against Edward Vazquez in Monte Carlo. Now, as we know, over the recent times, Joe Cordina, after winning that world title in spectacular fashion against Kenichi Ogawa in 2 rounds, has gone from strength to strength with that brilliant fight over Shavkat Rakhimov earlier on this year. Really one of the fights of the year in 2023. And he knows now, Joe Cordina, that he has to get past Edward Vazquez in order to set up those big unification fights at 130 pounds. We saw this past weekend O'Shaquie Foster, the WBC belt holder, in a fight of the year contender of his own against Rocky Hernandez in Cancun. If you haven't seen the 11th round of that one, make sure you check it out. O'Shaquie Foster, of course, being behind in that fight before rescuing things with a 12th round knockout. And could he be in the other corner to Joe Cordina next year in Cordina's home city of Cardiff as we get a unification bout? One thing's for sure, Joe Cordina will have to get past Edward Vazquez first this weekend and is looking to do so in style.
By no means this is going to be an easy fight, but it's one I'm looking to get through with flying colours, because if I want to unify and I want to beat the other champions, I'm going to have to get through this very comfortably as well. So
that was Joe Cordina there in confident mood as he looks to lay down a marker for a unification bout at 130 pounds. Now at 130 pounds, we've mentioned O'Shaquie Foster. There is of course Emmanuel Navarrete, the 3-weight world champion and the new WBO Super Featherweight champion. And there's Hector Luis Garcia, who of course is a former opponent of Gervonta Davis. One name of course that I haven't mentioned yet is Leigh Wood, the WBA Featherweight champion, who is now moving up to 130 pounds. Of course, both men under the Matchroom Boxing banner. You've got Joe Cordina with a fan base in Cardiff, and you've got Leigh Wood with that Nottingham support. Could they be on course for a collision in 2024? Could it be Josh Warrington, who of course came up short against Leigh Wood last time out, but is a 2-time IBF Featherweight champion? I'm sure he would be able to move up and get a shot at 130 pounds. All of those names will pale into insignificance if Joe Cordina takes his eye off the ball this weekend against a very capable opponent in Edward Vazquez. And one man whose job is to ensure that he doesn't do that is his trainer, Tony Sims. Here's what he had to say about the threat of Edward Vazquez this weekend.
Watched him fight against Raymond Ford, and it's his only loss, and it was a bit controversial. I thought he might have got the decision at the end of that. So, you know, he's relatively an unbeaten fighter really, and he's a tough Mexican, comes forward, bangs away. So yeah, you know, we're expecting a tough fight.
So that was Tony Sims, who has of course trained Joe Cordina since he turned pro back in 2016 and has taken him straight through to world title honors. Now, Joe Cordina, having been one of the most decorated amateurs to have ever come out of this country, is now hitting that stage of his career where the big fights are there to be made. Joe Cordina, experienced, has gone through the levels, has shown great power, shown great grit and resolve and determination against Shavkat Rakhimov, now is on the verge of one of those massive fights at 130 pounds. Could we see Cordina potentially go up to 135 pounds? He's boxed there earlier on in his career and is a big man for 130 pounds. Joe Cordina, should he win this weekend and those available opportunities to unify at 130 aren't there, then maybe he goes up to 135 pounds, which is of course one of the most star-studded divisions in boxing at the minute. But before all of that, he has to get past Edward Vazquez this weekend, and I expect him to do so in good fashion. Joe Cordina, as we've seen throughout his career, one of the most skillful fighters from these shores, and does possess that one-punch knockout power that we saw against Kenichi Ogawa. We saw the power carrying on late in the fight against Shavkat Rakhimov, hurting him several times throughout that fight. I expect Joe Cordina to put on a bit of a show this weekend in Monte Carlo and stop Edward Vazquez in emphatic fashion, setting up one of those big fights at 130 pounds next year. So from me, Rob Tebbutt, that is my Joe Cordina versus Edward Vazquez preview. Don't forget to let us know who you think is going to win this weekend down in the comments. But from me, Rob Tebbutt, here on 101 Boxing, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.